So you've heard all your coolest friends talking about their servers, self-hosting apps, and other interesting stuff running in their home lab, and you thought, gee, I want to be cool too. But you've heard that you need a big fancy server, and you need to be a network engineer or something like that, and you've never really touched Linux before. Well, guess what? That's okay. In this video, I'm going to share how to start your home lab journey from the hardware, software, and help answer some of the common questions that I see. So let's get into it. What is home labbing? My definition is a self-hosted environment where a user has the flexibility to deploy services, applications, and networking features with limited dependence on external tools. Next, why do people make their own servers or home labs? There are a few different reasons, but the main two are either because they have a need or a want. The need may be that they have a large collection of media and don't want to rely on paying an ever-increasing cloud storage subscription, or maybe you run a small business and the cost of recurring IT contracts isn't really in the budget. Then you can have a want, like it just sounds interesting to you and you want to learn more about running Linux or networking, or maybe you're in school for a tech degree and having a home lab would help you get more of a hands-on experience. Okay, so now that the pleasantries are out of the way, let's get into the hardware and software side of things. And I wasn't really too sure which route to go because some people start with the software and let that decide their hardware, while others find hardware first and then figure out what they can run on it. But to keep things simple, we are going to start with hardware this time. To run a home lab, the only thing you need is a single computer. That's literally it. This computer can range from a tiny little Raspberry Pi up to a giant server rack-mounted monstrosity and everything in between. And do you know who has all this kinds of hardware?
Micro Center. It's always Micro Center. They have everything. You guys know that. But yeah, it's not great out here, so let's go in. Okay, so when it comes to building out a beginner server, there's a couple of avenues you can go down at Micro Center. One's obviously the build your own. The most important thing, I guess it comes down to, is going to be processor. You could pick pretty much any processor in this cabinet and be perfectly fine for a beginner server. If you're looking for something optimal, my recommendation is Intel, just because their integrated graphics are great. For $189, you have the i5 245K, 14 cores. You're not gonna have issues with that at all. If you really wanted to go Ryzen, the 7600X. Wow, they have actually both. So they have the 7600X for 180, and then over here they have 9600X, which is an insane deal. Honestly, okay, go with that. That thing's gonna be a beast. But either that or the Intel would be perfectly fine. Then you get to pick a motherboard. And honestly, anything compatible would be fine. When you're choosing one for a server, probably want to have anything bigger than an ITX, so more PCIe slots so that you could fit more cards. Realistically, you're probably not going to have more than two. So something like this, a B60M, so M meaning that it is the M ATX, so 1, 2, 3 physical PCIe slots, 2 16 and 1 1X, and then you get 2.5 gig networking, and that's kind of all you need. 4 RAM slots. So I mean, honestly, this is probably your best bet. They do also have a clearance section, so go check that out. And they also do bundles, which are great because the other thing you're going to need is RAM. We all know the current RAM situation right now. Honestly, 16 gigs should be perfectly fine, but I recommend looking at the combo deals. Like I mentioned with PCIe cards, for most people, I wouldn't really recommend getting a graphics card for a beginner server, especially if you have an Intel processor with their integrated graphics, because they're actually really good. What you would probably want is more expansion or faster networking. So that would be this way. Okay, yeah, so you have PCIe cards for faster networking. So if you wanted something like 10 gig networking, you would get something like this. I actually have one of these. $100, upgrade your networking speeds. Another option is something like this. So if you wanted to add more NVMe storage, so your motherboard will probably have 1, 2, some really fancy ones have like 4 NVMe slots. If you want more, you can just straight up do little cards that have an NVMe drive. Jesus, words. And then they have something like this, 15 bucks. These are really cheap. And then that comes down to storage. Storage is the big one. It's a big reason why a lot of people get a server, is because they have a lot of anime or something they want to keep stored locally. You could spend a couple $100, you could spend a couple $1,000 on storage. How much do you need and how much are you willing to spend? But then you have your high-speed storage, so your NVMe and your SATA SSDs, typically for like your boot drives, and if you want to run some virtual machines and containers, higher speed storage is usually better. Now, another option, if you don't want to build your own, Micro Center has a crap ton of computers that are already built, pre-built, if you will. There's no shame. Look, if you don't want to build a computer but you want a server, buy a pre-built. They have ones obviously tailored for gaming. Then they have some like more server-looking options like this guy. And some popular options lately have been mini PCs if you really don't care about expansion too much. Oh, look, hold on. I'm passing up the server and workstation section. There's actual like server designed systems down here if you want those. So the last option is, so going with like off-the-shelf NAS solutions, like right here, they have a couple of Ugreen models as well as some Synology. I've done videos on plenty of these options, and realistically, they might be marketed as NAS devices, but that line is very, very fine between a NAS and a home server. Honestly, these things do everything. They can host virtual machines, they can run Docker containers. Obviously, they function as a NAS, and they really can do everything. I think the best bet, honestly, is the off-the-shelf NAS solutions. If you'd like to build your own system and you just think it's fun, I like doing that, go ahead and build one. If you want a system but really don't want to build it, again, the pre-builts are fine too. Check out any of the deals and any combo meals down in the description below, and let's get back to the studio.
Now, I went with this NAS box here from AUStar for a few reasons. One is that it comes loaded with Windows, which means no homebrew operating systems, which means that I can basically install whatever I want on it. And two is the form factor. It's pretty much perfect for a beginner setup. Compact, quiet, and easy to access my storage.
Hi guys, so Brett dragged me back here to show you my setup that I talked about from the other video. We're just gonna go ahead over what I'm running for my home lab and some of the hardware specifications and some of the software that I've got. So you can see right there is my beautiful NAS, my beautiful Ugreen NAS dual bay. The way that I got this NAS is I saw Ugreen's Kickstarter campaign and I decided to fund it. This is when I was in college and I was just interested in what the concept of what a NAS was. And so I just funded it and then it showed up at my doorstep. But after some research into NAS systems, I basically figured out that it was your own personal cloud. And I was highly interested in that because, you know, I had 28,000 photos sitting on my phone and I was like, there must be some better way to back this up that isn't to a external drive and isn't to Apple's ecosystem cloud that they've trapped me in that I will never escape ever with my subscription services. Some other parts of my setup include behind me, I also have, I don't know if you can see that, I have a Mac Mini down here that I use to back up my iPhone specifically. I have this hyperdrive that I've done a SIM link between my Mac Mini and the storage that's on here, and it backs up my iPhone. Additionally, part of my home lab setup, I guess, is I have my PC back there. It's got a Radeon 9070 XT and 7800 X3D. I just built it this year. Yes, she's a little ugly. She does have all black components in a white case, but we love her. We love her. She gets the job done, right? And of course, she's running Bazzite Linux because I am a gamer. On my left, we have my dead gamer DDR4 PC that I'm going to turn into a server eventually. Maybe Proxmox. I'm going to put it in a new body. It's going to be really, really exciting. For my networking setup, I have a GL-iNet Flint 2 router with the regular OpenWRT software that comes with it. Their proprietary software. I could flash vanilla OpenWRT, but that's for future Ava to worry about. And then really funny, I have this network switch that connects my NAS to my router in the other room, and this white wire runs across my floor into the other room because I am a renter, I am a gamer. So inside my NAS, I have two 4 terabyte drives that are in a RAID 1 configuration, so that's mirrored image. So all the data from one drive gets copied over to the other drive. And to be in RAID 1, it needs to cut the storage size in half, essentially, divide it by 2. So the maximum storage space I have on there is actually 2 terabytes. And we'll get into more of my configuration after Brett talks a little bit about his software, I think.
Now, remember how I talked about a hypervisor operating system? Well, I guess I should technically call these server operating systems. Now, there are plenty of options out there, and most of them are built on Linux. And when you start looking into home lab operating systems, some of the most common ones you'll encounter are Unraid, Proxmox, TrueNAS, COS-OS, and ZeamOS. You could also just use Windows if you really wanted to. I even did a video on that if you want to check it out, but some home labbers will see that as taboo. For a good all-around option, I'm going to use ZeamOS. Now, this isn't my personal favorite, but I do think it is a great beginner operating system. I will note that the free version limits you to 4 disks, but for $30, you can get a lifetime license with no limitations. All you have to do is download the ISO file and create a bootable USB drive using a program like Etcher or Rufus, then plug that into your computer or soon-to-be server, then enter the boot menu or the BIOS using the keys shown on the splash screen. From there, you'll be guided through the install process. And I don't want to get too in the weeds here since this is meant to be high level, so I just recommend you checking out the install guide for whichever operating system you choose. Once this is installed, the only output you should see from your server is a black screen with an IP address on it. That's because nearly every server operating system runs its own web UI that can be accessed from any machine on your network by navigating to that IP address displayed. Once you're in the ZeamOS web UI, that's your server. Okay, so let's log into our ZeamOS. I did use 3 12 terabyte drives. You can use up to as many as your server supports, but we went with 3. So the first thing we're going to do is set up our storage. You can't really do anything without storage. So we're going to go into the storage configuration here. It's prompting us to create storage. Fantastic. So it's going to ask if you want to use combined use or single use, where combined use is a RAID array. You're going to want to set up RAID in whatever operating system you pick. So if we go into combined use, it's going to prompt us on the type of RAID we want to use. So 2 common ones are RAID 5 and RAID 1. RAID 5 uses a single drive as parity, meaning that if you have 3 disks, one of them is used for parity and the other 2 is used for data. And RAID 1 is just mirroring, whether that's 2 drives or 10 drives, they'll all mirror each other and only give you 1 drive worth of data and as many of the other drives you have as redundancy. So since we have 3 drives, we're going to go with RAID 5. We're going to select all of our drives here. We should have 24 terabytes worth of usable space with 1 drive worth of protection. So we'll give it a name. We'll let it say RAID storage. Fantastic. And then it's going to create our RAID array. So this storage can be used for installing apps on and running things locally, of course, but you also want to have this storage to be able to be shared with devices on your network. So we are going to set this up as shared storage that we can access from all those devices. Now, a good thing about ZeamOS is that it kind of handles this at a high level by default. So you really don't have to do much, which is awesome for beginners. So we're going to go into the Files app here. And from there, we will see our main storage. So we have our hard drive that ZeamOS was installed on. Then we have our main storage that we just created. Now, if we go up here, you'll see this little shared icon. And if we click on that, you'll see the different shared folders that we already have. And like I said, main storage was shared by default. We click these buttons over here and click Manage Share. And that'll give you information on how to access it. So here in Windows, it gives you a straight up link. So you can copy this. We're going to open File Explorer. We're going to paste that in. It's going to prompt us for our username and password. And now we are in our storage. We can use this just like a regular shared folder here on our machine away from our network, but connected over the network or away from, it's accessing the folder across the network. However, maybe we want to create a subfolder that we can use to give access to other users. So what we can do is we can actually go into our main storage and say we want to create a new folder and call this one For the Wife. And then click Share via Samba. And you can select who you want to be able to access this to. So you can actually just create a new member or assign it to a guest. And assuming you've already created the user, a new user to log in, you can select them here, and just like that, it's been created. So if we go back to our shared, there it is, For the Wife. And again,
You can click on that, manage share, and just like that, we're into a new shared folder. Super easy to do, really fantastic for beginner setups. Okay, now let's install some apps. So from the dashboard, we're gonna click on App Store. And from here, there are a ton of things, and these are all running on top of Docker. If you don't know what Docker is, look it up. Basically, it's a container management solution that you can almost think of as its own app store. There's a lot of nuance to it, but for this level of video, just think of it as a way to install apps. We'll do Proxy Manager, I guess. So let's install that. And here it's going to give you some information about that container, the Docker image it's using, the title of it, if you want to set your own URL or icon, the ports it's going to use, it'll assign them automatically, network type, and you can leave all of this default if you really wanted to, which is awesome for beginners because if you want to learn more, you can go in here and kind of dig around and tweak some things. But if you just want to click a button, install, you can do that. Oh, please confirm. Okay, sorry. So here's one thing that it's flagging. So what this is doing is saying on the host, we're going to use port 80. On the container, it uses port 80. The problem is that port 80 is already being used, so we have to assign it to something different. We'll just do 8080. Voila, looks good. Click install. So it's done. And what's cool is that it adds the app to your dashboard. So if I click on this, see, it's giving us our initial login and password. Thanks. And it opens that straight to the app. And if we go in here, you'll see it uses that port 81 that we set initially when it created it for the web interface. Now we are in to our Nginx Proxy Manager. We installed it in like, 15 seconds. And that's the beauty of having a built-in app store. Now, as I said before, there are so many apps here. If you saw a video on it or you saw a Reddit post about a cool Docker app, they probably have it in here. And if they don't, up here at the top, you can do it yourself. So instead of it filling all that stuff out for you, you can do it yourself with the Docker image, the title, and all of the ports that you need for that, which are often shown in the Docker image help guide. So if you look up a Docker image, they'll usually guide you through on the configuration you need. The other thing I want to show is virtual machines on here, which is in the ZVM app. So we're gonna open that up. And it's going to ask which operating system do you want to use. And it's nice. I haven't seen this on too many operating or server operating systems where it'll give you some examples and just straight up let you download them directly from here. So I went ahead and I already downloaded the Windows 11 ISO. So it did that. So I can just select it from here. It's going to ask where the ISO is. It already has it. Cool. The virtual machine name, we'll leave that as it is. We'll say, let's give it 100 gigabytes. Now there are more advanced settings here where you can assign which CPU cores it has. So right now we have 4, maybe let's give it 8. 8 cores. How much RAM? We'll stick with, actually let's go with 8 gigs. And the network type, you can leave it as NAT if you want. I'm not going to get too into here. You can bridge with existing connections, but we'll just have it NAT and then create. And there you go. You can install Windows. So I'm going to go ahead and do that and get back to you in a couple of minutes, hopefully. And here we are like a zillion years later with our Windows virtual machine up and running. So yeah, running Windows inside of a Linux-based server operating system. You can go in and add as many virtual machines as you want. Linux, all different types of distros if you want to try them out, other Windows, VMs, whatever you want, whatever your hardware can handle. I strongly suggest you go in there and practice. That's the big thing. Go in there. Don't be afraid to make mistakes, mess up. It's going to be frustrating, but that's how you learn. That's how you get better. But I think that covers how you'd set up your theoretical Zima OS solution. So let's throw it back to Ava to see what kind of software she actually runs.
Dang, thanks for explaining all that, Brett. He talks a lot. Does anyone else notice that? I also heard that Brett uses Windows on the daily. You know, I don't own a single Windows machine because I'm Giga Chad like that. Do I use Arch? No. So when I first went down the big rabbit hole of operating systems and Linux systems and NAS operating systems, I was deciding ultimately between Unraid and TrueNAS Scale. So I ended up with TrueNAS Scale. I also like that TrueNAS Scale is blue, but that's really biased. That has nothing to do with the quality of the software. When I first booted up TrueNAS Scale, I did not know what I was looking at all. I was not used to the interface or anything. I did a little bit of research before I put it on there. That's when I configured my storage pool and all my data sets. And what a storage pool is it's basically like all the available data that you have, or storage space if you'd like, on your NAS. In this case, the 2 terabytes I talked about. And then data sets are kind of like folders. You can make different data sets for different apps that you install on your NAS, which is what I ultimately ended up doing. So on my NAS, I use Docker instead of Kubernetes. For my Docker instance, I use Dockage, which is also different than Brett. We have very differing opinions on this. Portainer is also a great application. I highly recommended it. That's what I first started with. But then I wanted to embrace simplicity. And I learned about Docker configuration files, and I really liked about Dockage that I could just drop the Docker file in there and then just spin up a container. Was really appealing to me. But it just makes everything a lot easier. And also it adds layers of isolation. So all of my Docker containers are in a Docker network that's like inside of Dockage, and that just makes it a lot easier to manage all of them. Anyway, so if we open my Dockage install, you can see some of my favorite Docker apps, but my favorites are Image, obviously for my 28,000 photos that I have. Image is a godsend. I have it on my phone. Every time I come back home, I back up all of my photos that I've taken for the day. It's honestly one of the best things I've ever used. Favorite app, 10 out of 10. My favorite little app as well is Memos. Memos kind of looks like Twitter, like if you were really lonely and like tweeting at yourself and you wanted to look back at all your tweets that you tweeted at yourself, but they're also notes where you're like talking to yourself. Yeah, I think it's just really creative. It's a really creative way to have a way of keeping notes or keeping a journal. So I personally prefer it because I like have really scattered thoughts and I just want to put them down and I just want to tweet them. I just want to tweet them to like myself, my future self. Another app I really like is called LinkedIn. It's a place where you can save all of your links that you have across the internet. Kind of like think about a website that holds all your bookmarks essentially. And so I prefer to have like a storage archive of all of my links and that I can go back to and archive and kind of like look at for later. To keep track of all of my containers, I have Uptime Kuma, which just kind of shows me all of my container health and their uptime. So if one of them goes down after I pull a latest update, I'll be able to see it there. It's also, I think, by the same developer who made Dockage. I also have Vault Warden. That's where I store all my passwords. It's basically a Rust version of Bitwarden. And then to access all of this, like I'm a user and not an admin, because I could go to my TrueNAS login every time and log into the OS. I'd rather go to my Glance homepage, and that's where I have all of my other unique things that I've customized, like it pulls the Steam sales and it pulls my favorite YouTubers videos. And I'm noticing now in the B-roll, Brett is not going to be in those favorite YouTubers. It also shows all my image stats, like the status of how many photos I have. It also shows the status of my NAS, like how much RAM and CPU usage is there. I have a calendar, and I can also search the web, and it has custom bangs where I can, search specifically YouTube or Reddit or anything like that. All right, now to access all of this, because my home lab would be pretty useless if I could only access it at home, I use this thing called Tailscale. So Tailscale is an app that is built on top of WireGuard that allows me to access my NAS outside of my local network via public and private key exchange. And Tailscale sets up a VPN, virtual private network, for all of my devices to talk to each other over that network. And I just turn that on my phone whenever I want to access my home lab from anywhere else, as long as I have Wi-Fi or even on my cellular data. And that even allows me to upload all my photos, access LinkedIn, or check the status of my containers back at home. But yeah, that's how I got started. This is my little home lab. I'm constantly expanding it. I hope you guys like it. I hope you guys like all my crazy wires I got going on here. And I'll see you in the next one.
And there you have it, folks. Hardware and software from both a theoretical sense and from an actual self-proclaimed beginner. I hope this was helpful for all of you out there watching, and if you have any questions, go ahead and leave them down in the comments section. If you liked the video, then drop a like and subscribe if you want to see more home lab content. I want to give a huge shout out to my YouTube members and my Patreons. You guys are my beginner home lab that is so easy to host and is totally open source. Y'all are great. And if you're still watching, you're VMware. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next one.